She already asked you the question. You just didn't hear it as a question. Most men think a woman who wants to get close will say it outright. She won't. She's not built to hand you a script. Instead, she tests the water with two specific questions. Small, almost throwaway lines that sound like nothing. And if you miss them, or worse, if you answer them wrong, she quietly closes the door and you never even know it happened. You'll replay the conversation later, wondering what went wrong. It wasn't the big moments. It was the two questions you brushed past because they seemed too simple to matter. So what are they? And why do 90% of men answer both of them incorrectly without realizing it? Stay with me. By the end of this, you won't just know the two questions. You'll know exactly what she's measuring when she asks them, and what your answer reveals about you, whether you mean it to or not. This is for the man who keeps meeting women who seem interested, engaged, even flirtatious, and then it fizzles. Not because she lost attraction, because somewhere in the conversation she asked something quiet and important, and your answer told her everything she needed to know. This is also for the man in a situationship who can't figure out why things feel stuck. You've had good conversations, good chemistry, but intimacy, real intimacy, not just physical closeness, never seems to arrive. You might be missing the exact moments she's opening the door. Here's the part most men never get told. Women don't test attraction the way men think they do. Men look for signs, a laugh, a lingering glance, a yes to a date. Women look for information. And the two questions I'm about to break down aren't romantic lines. They're diagnostic tools. She's using them, often without fully realizing it herself, to answer one thing. Is this man safe to be close to? That word, safe, is going to come up a lot in this video, and I want you to sit with it instead of dismissing it. Safety isn't about being weak or predictable. It's about whether a woman can lower her guard around you without getting hurt for it. Every woman who has been disappointed before, and by adulthood that's most of them, carries a quiet radar built specifically to catch the men who talk a good game but can't back it up. Here's my promise to you. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact two questions to listen for, what each one is really measuring, how to answer both in a way that builds real attraction instead of killing it, and the single most common mistake men make that turns a promising connection cold overnight. I'll also show you something most relationship content won't tell you: why answering these questions correctly using a script or a canned line almost always backfires. The two questions work because they're designed to detect performance. A man reciting the right words at the right time is exactly what she's screening for, and exactly what she can smell from a mile away. One more thing before we go further. These two questions don't always sound like questions. Sometimes they show up wrapped in a story, a complaint, or an offhand comment. Part of what you're about to learn is how to recognize them even when they're disguised. Because if you're only listening for a literal question mark, you'll miss most of them. Let's get into what these questions actually are and why almost every man answers them on autopilot. Most men believe a woman shows interest through compliments, through initiating contact, through obvious flirtation. So when she asks something quiet like, "What do you usually do when things get hard?" they treat it as small talk, filler, a gap to fill before the conversation moves on to something more exciting. It isn't filler, it's the first question. Question 1. What do you do when things go wrong? It rarely comes out that directly. It shows up as, what was your last relationship like when it ended? Or how do you handle stress at work? Or even something as simple as, have you ever been really disappointed by someone? On the surface, these sound like curiosity. Underneath, she's checking one thing: emotional regulation. Can you sit with discomfort without collapsing into it or exploding out of it? Here's why this matters more than almost anything else early on. Attachment research has shown for decades that people don't fall for potential partners based on how well things go. They fall based on how a partner behaves when things go badly. A man who gets defensive, who deflects with a joke that's really a shield, or who paints every past conflict as someone else's fault, is unknowingly answering the question with a giant red flag. A man who can talk about difficulty with steadiness, not stoicism, not suppression, just steadiness, passes a test he never knew he was taking. Now, here's the twist almost nobody talks about. This question isn't really about your past. It's a preview. She's not interested in the story for its own sake. She's using your past as a simulation of your future, specifically, a simulation of how you'll treat her the day she disappoints you, because eventually she will. Question 2. What do you actually want? This one is sneakier because it can show up as something almost aggressive. So, what are you looking for? Are you the kind of guy who does relationships or just hookups? Why are you even on this app? Men often hear this as pressure, as a woman trying to lock things down too fast, and they respond defensively. Vague answers, deflection. Let's just see where it goes. That response feels safe to the man giving it. It feels like the opposite to the woman receiving it. Here's the psychology. Ambiguity doesn't read as freedom to most women, it reads as risk. Cognitive dissonance research explains part of this. When someone can't predict an outcome, the brain treats that uncertainty as a low-grade threat, not an adventure. A woman asking what you want isn't necessarily rushing toward commitment. She's trying to calibrate how much of herself is safe to invest, because investing in an undefined situation with an unclear man is how women end up hurt, confused, and blaming themselves for months afterward. Let me give you a real scenario. A client of mine, I'll call him Daniel, was seeing a woman for 6 weeks. Great chemistry, great conversation, physical intimacy came fast. But she kept pulling back emotionally, and he couldn't understand why. Turns out, 3 weeks in, she'd asked him almost exactly this. What are you doing with your life right now, relationship-wise? He'd laughed it off. Just enjoying the moment, you know? To him, that was cool and low pressure. To her, it was a man who couldn't or wouldn't tell her where she stood. Within 2 weeks, she was gone. The truth underneath both questions is the same. Women aren't asking for guarantees, they're asking for clarity and composure. Because clarity and composure are the two things that make closeness feel safe enough to risk. So now the real question becomes obvious. If these are the two things she's testing for, how do you actually answer them in a way that builds attraction instead of killing it? Step 1. Answer difficulty with ownership, not performance. When she asks about a past conflict, a breakup, or stress, don't sanitize it and don't perform strength you don't feel. Say something like, yeah, that one was rough. I didn't handle the first few weeks great, but I figured out what I needed to change. That single sentence does more work than any confident-sounding story where you're always the hero. The psychology here is simple. Self-awareness signals emotional capacity. A man who can name his own missteps without spiraling into shame or deflecting into blame shows her he can hold difficulty without needing her to manage his emotions for him. That's what safe actually means in practice. The common mistake, over-explaining or turning it into a therapy session on the second date. She's not looking for a confession. She's looking for evidence briefly delivered that you can be honest about yourself without falling apart. Say it, own it, move on. Step 2. Replace ambiguity with direction, not pressure. When she asks what you want, resist the two extreme reactions: overcommitting to sound impressive or staying deliberately vague to sound relaxed. Instead, tell the truth about where you actually stand, stated plainly. I'm not interested in wasting time. If I'm spending it with someone, I want it to be going somewhere. Works whether you're looking for something serious or just being upfront that you're figuring it out. What matters isn't the specific answer. What matters is that you have one. Why this works. Certainty, even modest certainty, lowers threat detection. A woman doesn't need you to want marriage by Tuesday. She needs to know you're not going to leave her guessing about your own intentions, because guessing is exhausting, and it's usually how women get hurt. The common mistake here is treating this question as a trap and answering with a joke to escape it. Deflection reads as evasiveness, and evasiveness is the single fastest way to lose the ground you built in step 1. Step 3. Let your answers come out slower than your instinct wants. Both questions tend to arrive casually, almost buried inside a normal conversation, and most men rush to fill the silence with whatever sounds smooth. Don't. A short pause before answering something that actually matters doesn't read as awkward. It reads as a man who's actually considering what he's about to say instead of running a script. The psychology? Performative smoothness is easy to detect and hard to trust because everyone's met a man who's good with words and terrible with follow-through. A brief pause signals the opposite, that your words are actually connected to something real underneath them. The common mistake, treating silence as failure and rushing to fix it with charm. Let it sit for 1 extra second. That second is doing more for you than you think. Step 4. Track her response, not just her words. After you answer either question, watch what happens next. Does she lean in and ask a follow-up? Does she open up more herself? That's her matching your honesty with her own, a strong signal she felt something land. If instead she changes the subject quickly or gets noticeably lighter and more surface level, that's information too. It doesn't necessarily mean you failed. It might mean she's not ready to go deeper yet, or it's simply not the moment. The mistake most men make here is not tracking this at all, answering the question and moving straight on to the next topic without noticing whether the door opened or closed a little. Pay attention. The two questions are only half the picture. Her reaction to your answer is the other half. Step 5. Don't chase the moment you missed. If you realize watching this that you fumbled one of these questions with someone recently, resist the urge to go back and fix it with a follow-up text explaining yourself better. That almost always makes it worse, because now you're performing self-awareness instead of just having it. The better move is to demonstrate the correction through your next few interactions, not through an essay defending your last answer. Why? Actions carry more evidential weight than explanations, especially with something this subtle. She won't remember your exact words. She'll remember how you made her feel the next time you're steady, clear, and unbothered instead of anxious and over-explaining. Here's what I want you to understand before you close this video and go back to overthinking every text message you sent this week. None of this works if you're performing it. You can memorize every step I just gave you, and if you're delivering it like a man trying to pass a test, she will feel that performance before she hears a single word of it. The steadiness has to be real, or it isn't steadiness at all. It's just a more sophisticated version of the same anxiety you're trying to hide. So the real work isn't learning what to say when she asks these two questions. The real work is becoming a man who already knows how he handles difficulty and already knows what he wants, so that when the moment comes, you're not constructing an answer, you're just telling the truth because you've already done the thinking in private, long before she ever asked. That takes patience most men don't want to hear about, because patience doesn't feel like progress. It feels like standing still while everyone around you seems to be moving fast, texting faster, dating faster, committing faster, or claiming not to care at all, which is its own kind of performance. But a man who's actually done the internal work doesn't need to rush the two questions, because he's not afraid of either one. He already knows how he handled the last hard thing. He already knows what he wants. The questions stop being tests and start being ordinary conversation. Here's the reframe I want you to leave with. Stop treating these moments like exams you might fail. Start treating them as mirrors. Every time a woman asks what you do when things go wrong, or what you actually want, she's not judging you from some position of power over you. She's showing you, in real time, exactly where your own clarity is strong and exactly where it's still shaky. That's not a threat. That's information you can use whether things work out with her or not. The men who get this right aren't the smoothest talkers in the room. They're the ones who stopped needing to be. They answered the hard question about themselves long before anyone else asked it out loud. So the next time she asks you something that sounds small, what do you do when things get hard? What are you actually looking for? Don't reach for the right words. Reach for the true ones. That's the whole method. That's always been the whole method. If this gave you something to think about, don't scroll past it. Hit subscribe, because I'm breaking down exactly this kind of psychology every week. And drop a comment below telling me which of the two questions you've been getting wrong, because I read every single one, and your answer might become the next video.